tell me about this mythical realm of Hindustan.
So basically what we've done is we've kind of pushed the map a little bit to the east, or cut it slightly in the western edge, as you can see here. There's no longer a coastline along Africa. And we had to do this to get some more space in the east instead, and to get the proportions right.
Mm-hmm.
Mind you, we haven't removed any provinces or anything off the western edge of the map. It was kind of difficult to get the projection right, if you will. Now the projection isn't that we're using; it's kind of homegrown. It's not one of the true map projection styles that you would use on a real map. But we've kind of come up with our own here, and the reason for that is we want to hide as much as we can of the uninteresting areas and show as much as we can of the interesting areas.
Mm-hmm.
So, far northern Siberia, for example, isn't really that interesting and relevant to the game. It allowed us to make India fairly big and prominent, as it should be. You can see it's pretty much almost the size of Western Europe on its own.
So how many provinces in total have you guys added, you think?
In total, it's something like 320. We're still tweaking a little bit around the edges and so on, but I think it's 320, 330 at the moment. Now, there's all kinds of little interesting stuff here. Adding ports to the Indian Ocean, which we did, of course, having India and all this new coastline meant we needed more ports. We also took this opportunity to add some interesting places in the Indian Ocean, like Socotra here, for example, which at this time was actually Christian. It was an Nestorian island. The whole idea here is that all these three religions are very tolerant and pluralistic compared to the Christian and Abrahamic faith that you're so used to previously in the game. So there have no heresies. All three of them are free of heresies, essentially. What you can do instead is that you can pick a sect or a branch of your particular religion. So the Hindus, for example, they have the Shaivists who hold Shiva foremost. It's a little bit more complicated than that, and they have all kinds of other, what would be heresies in Christianity are actually acceptable branches. You could say that of the Indian three religions, the Hindus play the most like what you would be used to. They're fairly aggressive. They are allowed to raid their neighbors like pagans would be able to do. And they can declare holy wars as well. Now, they don't have a head of the religion, so they don't have kind of a Hindu pope or anything like that. There aren't really any such things within these religions. However, the Jains, they're the religion that you would want to be if you want to maintain a very stable realm. Because, as I mentioned, other Indian religions will not cause problems, and their vassals will like them for being so peaceful. So the idea here is that you might want to start out as a Hindu, conquer what you want to conquer, and then switch over to either Buddhism or Jainism.
Mm-hmm. And you can do that at any time in the game, as long as you do it once per lifetime.
Yeah, each ruler can only do it once, and it does cost a lot of prestige to do it. But, it is viable. Yeah, as you might be able to see here on the map, we've actually set it up so that there are passes into India, into the subcontinent.
Interesting.
For example, this is the Khyber Pass, very famous.
Infamous, if anything else.
Yes. Well, the patron gods are more like a little flavor thing.
Mm-hmm.
There are also some events around that, and they give you a particular modifier. So you can kind of offset, you can offset some negative penalties for being, one of the religious branches that you have picked by picking another patron god.
So it's like a -1 diplomacy plus martial.
Yeah, they're not, earth-shattering. We don't have the Tibetan branch of Buddhism in the game because we decided at an early point that we would not include Tibet. And the reason is that particular branch of Buddhism and that culture would have required a little bit too much work to fit in there this time around.
Would people be able to mod in, say, patron gods for the Norse? Say, I want to have Thor as my patron god. Would that be possible?
That would be very easy. That would be very easy to do.
Okay.
So the idea here is basically that we can shove some more interesting stuff in here. We have friends arrivals, we have marriage ties, that's, in-laws, and we could have lovers here as well. And we've actually added support for more than one lover to create some more drama in the game. But basically what we've done is that we've removed the horse archer unit type, and we replaced it with basically any kind of unit type that you can now script. So this is for modders. So if you want a new unit type...
If you want wizards...
Yeah, it's like, Walrus Riders or whatever. You could actually like add that.
I'm sorry. What did you do to Henrik, and why is Don sitting here all of a sudden?
Yeah, no, I mentioned that because Don keeps talking about it.
Yeah, no, he's obsessed with polar bears for some bizarre reason.
He wants to weaponize animals, and how weird is that?
Well, we have elephants in the game.
Yeah, that's actually good point.
Just
good
saying,
point.
you know,
Yeah.
this was a very subtle interlude into elephants, by the way. Just saying.
Yeah. There is a war elephant. I actually gave the guys who made the war elephant some criticism on the rider.
He's very. Why is he standing?
No, he looks a bit strange, so that's going to be worked on. But that's the war elephant as it currently appears in the game. Factions that rise up in revolt should be more unified and present, a stronger front.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is the faction leader gets a temporary title that matches the tier of his liege. So if I'm a duke in Sweden and I rise up, I will actually be kind of a temporary king, and the other faction members will be my vassals.
Right.
So it will be one country, a civil war side in the war. Adam's Bridge. There were a lot of discussions about this particular thing because it was swept away somewhere in the 1400s, which is pretty much at the end of the game. At least that's what we believe happened with it. These days, if you actually go into Google Maps and go into satellite mode and you look at it, it does look like there was a bridge there at one point in time. No, I think it's fairly well known that it was a specific hurricane that destroyed it after the game ends, really. So it's perfectly justified to have it there as far as I know.
Cool.
You can have Indian merchant republics, no problem at all.
So, but you would need to set them up manually, I guess, by giving a holding to a city.
Yeah, again, we're looking into if we can add one or maybe two of these to the game, but I can't say for sure. We haven't found any really good candidates yet.
There's no religious context for it, or
no, it's not that.
Or
it's
historical context for it.
Historical context is what we're after.
Okay,
really.
Cool.
I've added a trait called decadent. So characters can get decadent, and it's of course more likely that they do this if they are landless, they're hanging about, they don't have much to do, they're indolent basically, and if they have other heathenist type traits or sinful traits. So gluttonous characters, slothful characters, and so on are much more likely to pick up the decadent trait, and only decadent or characters with the decadent trait actually give decadence to the dynasty. If you've played the game, you will know that sometimes your sons and brothers ask you for a title.
Mm-hmm.
They come to you and they want to have a title of their own. And normally you could just refuse and they would be a little bit pissed off.
You're not ready yet.
And nothing would happen,
Exactly.
basically. So, but now there is a risk, especially if they're ambitious characters, that they will, after a while, a month might pass or something, and then they might just go into exile. And that's never a good sign, because that means they're up to something.
That means they're going somewhere to raise an army.
Then you'll hear some more about their adventures over there, and they might actually come back with an army behind them and try to take a title. The Golden Horde and the Ilkhanate, they arrive in the same way that they did before, but they arrive in different positions, basically off the new end of the map.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not changed very much.